Hey guys, this is Jannecke from Wisdom from North. I'm now at the Body, Mind, Spirit Festival at Lillestrøm in Norway, and I'm sitting here with Osiris Montenegro, who is a soul counselor, and he has had many talks here at the festival. And today we're going to speak about true masculinity for men and women, and true femininity for men and women, and much, much more. Hi Osiris, how are you doing?
Hi Jannecke, very happy to be here with you again.
Yes, because I interviewed you last year and we spoke about fear and choosing a future. But now we're going to speak about masculinity and femininity. And you said you're talking about true masculinity for men and women. So let's start that. What do you mean by that? What is that?
Thank you. I could go the other way first. What we have a lot of right now is a toxic masculinity. And toxic masculinity is a masculinity that is divorced from the feminine. And one way to understand this is looking at the yin and yang symbol, for example. As an acupuncturist, I use a lot of, the wisdom of the Tao in Chinese medicine. And the yin and yang symbol has one white half going up and one dark side going down. And then in the middle of the white, there is a little dark spot. And in the middle of the dark, there is a little white spot. And what that means is that there is yin within yang and yang within yin. So true masculinity is a masculinity that is connected to the feminine. And true femininity is a femininity that is connected to the masculine. So the work that I do is first true masculinity for women and men, meaning that a lot of the gender wars that have been going on for a few decades have negatively affected the wisdom and the power in the women. And so women have lost contact with their own inner masculine. And likewise, men who have become toxic because they have lost connection to their inner feminine are very aggressive and very much disrespecting boundaries, disrespecting the sovereignty of individuals and nature at large. So the teachings are both a response to what is happening within humanity, but also a response to what humanity is doing with the planet. We are nature, and nature is feminine with masculine in it. A volcano is very masculine. But the rainforest is very feminine. The oceans are very feminine, right? So there is everything that is alive has to have a fire to keep it alive and going. But you also need to have water so that it could, tame the fire. So in terms of men, we have men that have too much fire and not enough water. Men don't feel deeply enough. They feel superficially, and it's usually only good feelings, euphoria, created artificially, video games, sports.
Okay, so you're saying that men need to get in contact with their emotions, like deeper emotions, like even hurtful emotions, like pain and stuff like that.
Yes, but you see, that's the problem with the women, that they are immersed in their emotions. So what I'm referring to is something more refined. Men need to decondition themselves from not feeling, from being numb to sensations and feelings, and if anything, being emotional, but only aggressive emotions, right? Deny the fear, deny the hurt. Women need to subtract themselves from their emotions and become more rational, more logical. For example, in the first True Masculinity class that I taught in Palma, Mallorca, it was only women students, which of course caused me to have to change the whole approach to the class, which I did with men and women in mind. And what I discovered as we were exploring this for women is that for all of them, they had a difficulty choosing something and staying with it. they were presenting themselves with multiple choices all the time. And then when we got into the experiential part, you know, they were identifying with their feelings and emotions to the point that there was no awareness left outside the experience of their feelings. And so when you have the masculine dimension of your being present, it's more like an observer, like a benevolent, caring, loving, intelligent observer that cares, but is not, you know, immersed in the feelings.
It makes sense what you're saying. At the same time, I've had the opposite perspective. I felt that I'm so in touch with my masculinity, and a lot of Scandinavian women are, I feel like, because we're so equal with men here in Scandinavia, and we're to really be heard. We've moved into our masculine energy in a way, like goal-oriented and almost not, you know, stepping into our true feminine power.
I will agree with that. I will say that in this particular society, which is very affluent, because you could see a lot of women that are very poor being very masculine because they have to. Right? Here it is a luxury choice, right? That I'm just going to be equal, I'm going to be treated as equal. And I agree, and that's why when I have the class True Femininity for Men and Women, one of the things that we both go to extremes. So a masculine woman has gone too far in her masculine essence, where she has lost touch with, you know, how to be receptive, how to lose, not always having to win, how to really truly cooperate instead of competing. You know, there are very important balancing feminine values that counteract, you know, the very also necessary masculine values of, you know, protecting, initiating, choosing. And so a woman that moves too far to that side, then she feels very autonomous. There's a lot of agency to her, but her ability to commune in intimate relationship, for example, then it will be difficult, you know, to drop her guard, to open up, to be transparent, more significantly, to surrender to love, right? And normally, what a healthy, loving relationship is that you surrender to love, right? Nothing else is worth surrendering to, right? If you can have your integrity, your honor, and only surrender to something greater than that, it will have to be love. That's why when I talked about what we were going to do, I said that this is a class about power and love. Not the love of power, but loving powerfully. And we have masculine love and we have feminine love. Masculine love is tough love. It's a love that protects, that makes boundaries, that is disciplined, is determined. It is response-able, and it makes others accountable. Feminine love is sweet, tender, nurturing, forgiving, compassionate, very healing, right? Connecting, linking. Whereas tough love is like, you know, making boundaries. So if we have a person that is divorced in those aspects within themselves, they are going to also gravitate to a polarized world, you know, to either be too masculine or not feminine enough, or too feminine and not masculine enough.
And how would I know if I'm on that side or in balance?
Very good question. Well, you said earlier that you feel you're more on the masculine side.
Yes, but I'm thinking like anyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, but well, for example, since I'm talking to a woman, you know, we can ask a woman, you know, okay, so do you feel balance in your feminine? So, for example, how is it for you to surrender?
Surrender to love, or?
Yeah, surrender to love. Yeah, yeah.
A bit scary.
Yes, and that is healthy, because there is a lot of imposters of love out there. You know, there is a lot that is supposed to be loving that is not. It hurts. It controls, is deceitful, right? So it is healthy to do that, but then here is where the teaching, is self-containing. If there is a part of you that is afraid to get hurt, and let's say that that's the reason any woman will be afraid to surrender to a man's love, that hurt needs to be protected so that it can heal. Because when a woman is in her power, for example, here is a mother with a child, and something happens, her masculine energy will come in a moment to protect the child. And when the danger passes, in a moment she will turn and nurture the child. So that's how you know that you have a good functioning balance of male and female. If a situation requires you to become more masculine, then that energy will come forward. If a situation requires to become more feminine, then that energy will come forward. For example, a father who has a daughter that comes home and she has been bullied, right? So it will be good that first he can comfort her and connect to her and tell her that, it is wrong, to be treated like that. But then he will also guide her to learn to protect herself. And he will, emulate and if depending how bad it is, at one point, he will want to work with her so that her sense of confidence cannot be hurt. Because in this case, that's what happened, that, somebody more insecure than her went against her boundaries. And so what the father will need to do is first be nurturing, but then teach her how to make boundaries. And the biggest boundary that a father can pass to a daughter, for example, is the boundary that who she is good enough, not because of what she does, but because of who she is. Right? So we need to teach women more about how valuable they are. I had a wonderful experience of, helping somebody who had a surgery recently, and I stayed with them. And I had an opportunity to know what it's like to be a mother, a wife, a helper, a nurse, roles that every woman does every day. And I couldn't believe how exhausted I was at the end of the day. And that, it didn't matter if it was Sunday or Thursday, the same things had to be done over and over again. Shop, cook, clean, shop, cook, clean, shop, cook, clean, And how it was just taken for granted, and it was done, in 10 minutes. And I had such respect and humility for how much, the world takes women for granted. How little, what the feminine does in service of the masculine is acknowledged. And because it's taken for granted, and many women go along with that, does that then they have the reaction to then not be taken for granted, right? And become very defensive and is always arguing for equality. And equality is very good, but we need to understand that we are different. We're equal in value and different in function. Very important in relationships, in dynamics, in the real world.
Mars and Venus.
Yes, yeah, both planets,
Yes.
both going around the sun, but, in different, locations, different spaces, and exhibiting different characteristics.
Very interesting. So you said a few tools about what we could do. We could practice in the situation. So does it have to do with awareness? So I can feel like, okay, this is a situation. Now let's not go on autopilot. Let's feel what does this situation demand, and then feel into my intuition more to balance the both sides. I'm looking for how we can balance it.
Yes. Well, that's why I have two different classes, and then the retreat is putting them both together. So you first learn to have proper boundaries so that you can have a container where you are safe. If there is fear inside of you, you will automatically be in reaction to the world. And so you want to cultivate the knowledge, the awareness, the presence of being safe. Many times why we get into trouble is that we assume that we're not safe. And so the safety requires this masculine energy of protection, of having clear, strong boundaries. But also at the same time, when you begin to integrate the feminine is extremely intuitive. And so she is not only sensing, but she can even sense before something happens, right? So we have the masculine knowingness we call common sense. It's like a gestalt that lands whole and complete and is always confirmed by intuition. Or we have an intuitive hit first and then you get a common sense confirmation. So obviously, if you have trauma that keeps you afraid or keeps you angry, then you need to overcome that. And that's why, I teach first the tough love, true masculinity, so that you can create a safe space, and then remove the internal conflict, right? Because it's not just that you have a wall around you, but inside the wall there is another wall, right? So we need to go in there. And that's where the soul healing comes in. That's when you need to be soulful and be able to penetrate your own defenses that you build over a lifetime to protect you from getting hurt again.
It's a long process, it sounds like.
Well, it is, but again, being soulful is to live in a state of becoming. You're never at the end. You're always in a state of becoming. And you're also aware that your becoming is in relationship to the environment. So changing environment outside, changing internal environment. And what I teach people is that if you cultivate a set of values that will help your mind know what to do without having to think about it. For example, if you truly have a value of love, you will not harm others. If you have a value of honesty, you will not lie to others, take from them. Right?
Yeah, I agree. Being aware of your values, like speaking them out, think about it, contemplate on it. Awareness is key.
Well, even beyond that, like not just. So what I teach is that you go from being aware to being present. So you wanna transform awareness into an in-touchness, so that you are not just aware of love, you become loving. So love as who you are will not harm another. Love as who you are will protect the innocent. Love as who you are will speak truthfully. Love as who you are will be compassionate if somebody's hurting. And so these are not things that are mediated by thinking, they are mediated by the feeling of the truth, which again is feminine. So feeling precedes thinking, right? When we are born, we're a sentient being before we can even think, right? And then the defenses that we learn to create to feel safe, many of them are nonverbal. Many of them is just tension patterns. And so you need to learn to relax. That's why when I do this work, there is an emphasis, and I bring in, some female teachers who do movement and yoga and, all kinds of things, where you have an experience of how to let go of tension, how to increase your feeling capacity. You can't heal what you can't feel.
You can't heal what you can't feel?
What you cannot feel, right? Now, you don't want to get stuck in feeling, right? But, if you have layers of protection and it is the core injury, you need to tap into the core injury. Now, once you tap into that, that is not a long process. If you have the proper support and a big enough map to understand who you are in the present and who it was that got injured a long time ago.
Like find the root of the tree.
Yes, and then understand that the whole tree is what grew because of the injury. So the injury is like a little friction that helps us grow. and get tough, right? Because this is a tough planet. So you need to be strong and you also need to be sensitive. Yeah.
Like duality. Yes, and finding the balance.
Well, is polarity without becoming polarized. Like I said, it's more like a dance that, you know, you keep changing the song, but there is another song already inside that song. So it is not, and that's what I, you know, aim to teach, that you have the flexibility spontaneously to go from masculine mode to feminine mode and from feminine mode to masculine mode. And you do that by a knowing of what is appropriate, which happens without thinking. The idea is that once you transcend the mind and you include the soul doesn't think, the mind thinks, the soul knows. Much faster, much more efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you so much for addressing this very important topic, because I think a lot of us, by delving into this this topic or addressing it in yourself, you can feel more whole.
Exactly.
And authentic and live true and not after what society is telling you to do or the pressure. You know, we can feel the pressure subconsciously, I believe, to that we have to be like this or have to be like that, even though we're not aware of it. And I think it starts with awareness and then practicing it and opening up, and then that becomes your truth, your new standard or your new way of living. But it is a journey.
Yes, it is indeed, yeah. And we're all in it together.
Yeah.
And one of the important distinctions for people who care is to know how to be efficient with their good intentions. We see, you know, a lot of, and I'm very happy for this, you know, women wanting to be involved in politics, wanting to be involved in changing the world. And so we need to empower women to truly lead in a feminine way with masculine qualities. You know, we need to have cooperation, not so much competition, but we also need to have precision. We need to have discipline. We need to have, you know, standards that, you know, work for everybody. Again, that's the feminine hierarchy. The masculine hierarchy, unfortunately, is me first. Right? Now, the feminine hierarchy is very wise. It's like, you know, me first, then us, then everybody. And so most people go as far as you and I, my group. But if they're truly feminine, the universal care is to include everyone, to care for all of life. And right now, for the generations to come, we must teach them this. We must teach them that, you know, you can grow up selfish, because you will consume the planet. And we are doing that right now. And so it's very important for parents to teach the necessity of soul-to-soul contact, of meaningful interactions, of doing things not to win or lose, but to connect.
Thank you so much, Osiris, and all the best with your wonderful work.
Thank you, Jannecke, and it's always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you for watching, guys. Much light from Lillestrøm in Norway. Bye!